There's a lot of misunderstanding surrounding the topic of suing vaccine manufacturers for vaccine-related injuries. Many people will tell you that you cannot sue for these injuries, and some will go further and say it's a major reason not to trust vaccines. None of that's quite right, and it's also the topic of this week's Healthcare Triage. In the 1980s, a one-hour television documentary titled Vaccine Roulette claimed that the vaccine for diphtheria, tetanus, and whooping cough caused permanent brain damage. The claim was based on a small study out of the UK with several methodological flaws, and it was fully disproven by subsequent studies. However, those studies took time, and chaos ensued in the interim. Personal injury lawsuits against vaccine manufacturers started pouring in, to the point that some of them decided to stop making vaccines altogether. This led to major instability in the vaccine market, production decreased, and concerns arose about vaccine supply and vaccination rates. In response to all of this, the National Childhood Vaccine Injury Act of 1986 was passed by Congress. The act outlined a few things, a major one being limited liability for vaccine manufacturers in order to maintain availability of critical vaccines. Because who wants to produce a product, even a really important one, if they're going to face constant legal battles over it? Especially for a product with exceptionally high safety requirements and closely monitored side effects. But does that mean no one is held liable if the vaccine is unsafe? Absolutely not. Under this system, people who believe they have been harmed by certain vaccines do not begin with a lawsuit in civil court. Instead, they file a petition through the U.S. Court of Federal Claims. The Department of Health and Human Services and the Department of Justice review the case, and a special master who acts as a judge in the vaccine court decides whether compensation is appropriate, and if so, what amount. If the plaintiff accepts the ruling, compensation is awarded through the program. If not, they may have the option to pursue a traditional lawsuit afterward, depending on the details of the case. The process is meant to be more efficient and less contentious than typical product liability litigation. So it's true that vaccine manufacturers have significant legal protections for covered vaccines, but this is heavily balanced with safety data, and they can't just go wild without consequences. Federal law shields them from liability for injuries associated with unavoidable side effects so long as the vaccine was made correctly and accompanied by proper instructions and warnings. Without this protection, manufacturers might leave the market, putting the vaccine supply and overall public health at risk. These protections don't make compensation impossible, but they do change where and how claims must be made. Anyone pursuing a claim must also meet certain requirements. The vaccine in question must be one of those covered by the program. The injury must also meet the standards laid out in the vaccine injury table, a table listing injuries and/or conditions associated with covered vaccines, or be supported by clear evidence showing that the vaccine caused the problem. If the injury is not listed on the table, the plaintiff can still pursue the claim, but they must show causation, which requires more evidence. There are also limits on how and when claims can be made. The program has strict filing deadlines. Not every adverse event can be compensated, because an event occurring after vaccination does not automatically mean the vaccine caused it. Since it was established, over 25,000 claims have been adjudicated. Just over 12,000 of those resulted in compensation. In a nutshell, legal claims can be made for vaccine-related injury, but the process is regulated in a way that maintains a stable vaccine supply and protects public health. Vaccine manufacturers have significant legal protections when vaccines are made and labeled correctly, so suing them directly is limited. Compensation is still possible, but it requires evidence, following the correct process, and an understanding that not every adverse event is caused by vaccination. Hey, did you enjoy this episode? You might enjoy our whole series on the history of vaccines. We'd like it if you'd like the episode, subscribe to the channel down below. Consider going to patreon.com/healthcaretriage, where you can help support the show, make it bigger and better. We'd especially like to thank our research associates, Joshua Crow, Edward Liljeholm, and Christopher Learn, and of course, our Surgeon Admiral, Sam.